I'm going to spell this out. Quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. That's what's going on right now. But before we get into that, let's look at the economy. Now, let me say it. I do not have a degree in any of this. None. Absolutely none. But I'm going to show you a little bit how it works. You have your central bank, which is the Federal Reserve, and every nation has a central bank. So we have a central bank, and then right out here we have our banks, and we have two of them. Your commercial bank, your investment bank, you get the nature. And then over here is you. And then down here is a firm or a company, Walmart, whatever. And when our economy is working, the money, you go here, you go to bank, whether the bank is investing here or here. We go to here, down to here, back to here. So in other words, when at the Federal Reserve, and they are, let's just forget about them right now. Let's talk about the banks. The banks give money, or don't give money, but the banks have money for you to come and borrow. And when you borrow that money, you go down here and you buy a product with that money. And then that money flows back to the bank, and we've got a process going. And if you have a process that if you have, let's just see right here. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but in this process is how they measure our GDP, gross domestic product. And you'll get those numbers if it's high or if it's low. What determines that is two things: supply and velocity. And supply is how much. Now it's really important to understand this. This means how much is circulating. Now you can't read that, but that's all right. And the velocity means the speed in which it circulates. So when you get this amount of money that's circulating, and the more money that circulates and the speed, then we have our GDP grows. If this slows, then it contracts. So when you hear this gross domestic product, this is the key components. This is the components. Now, what happened in 2000, so if you understand, bank, and it's more important than them even loaning to each other, but bank loaning to you going out here and buying products, and then the firm goes right back to the bank, and then the firms are either building more firms. Anyway, we're causing the economy to grow. And because the economy grows, inflation goes down, unemployment goes down, So we say we have a strong economy when we have those components. Well, in 2008, everything collapsed. And what happened with the collapse, and I'm not going to worry too much about it, but some of the banks, and Bear Stearns, I think was one of them, was needing to borrow too much money. Several of them was needing to borrow too much money. Banks, when they close, they borrow money from each other. And if they can't get another bank to loan the money, sometimes they have to look to the central bank. But we're not too concerned about that phase of it. But what happened in 2008 with all of this problem with the stock market, these banks too big to fail, the Fed was trying to fix this, and of course it failed, and honestly, if they hadn't have pumped all that money in, we would went into a depression probably. But we're 10, 11 years later, we probably should have, because we'd been out of it by now. But here we are in 2019, so remember, you've got your central bank over here. And this central bank I won't get too. This central bank, well, them numbers are terrible. They want to pump money into the bank. So the banks will now get the money back to you, and then you get it back to the firms, and then they take it back to the bank. Well, the central bank, and it sounds good on paper, but it's not working, because there's two things they can't control: the banks and you. They can't make the banks loan the money, and they can't make you borrow the money. What happens, we get afraid the economy is in trouble, so what do? We quit spending. We not only quit spending, we start trying to pay our debts off. Good concept, rips the economy apart. There has to be a certain amount of borrowing to go on before the economy can survive. It has to be. Maybe if we could get into a brand new world, we wouldn't have to have, but today if everybody stopped going on credit, the economy will collapse. The proof is in the pudding. They can't control. So what's happening, the central bank is pumping money into our banks. Chase Bank, Bank of America, Citigroup, all these. And the thing about these banks here, they still don't have any confidence in you. So this is why the president tells the Federal Reserve, because there's only two things the Federal Reserve can do, the central bank. There's only two things they can do. One, lower interest rates. Two is acquire assets. That's the only two things they can do. That's all that the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank, that's all that they can do. So, our president begs them to lower the interest rates. And the last time I think they lowered it, was it down to 0.25%? And they're talking about even 0%, maybe even getting into the negative, because they realize how unstable our market is. So he tried to get them to lower the interest rate. Well, they did. But it's not working. So, because what they're doing, they're still loaning money to the banks. But the banks, the banks are putting them on their books. Maybe taking care of some of their debts. And I'll show you in a minute also some things they're doing. That's making their books look better, but they're not loaning to the people. So this diagram I had is still clogged. And because it's clogged, it's causing the economy to contract. You might say, well, Roger, how can you say that? Look at our stock market. We reached an all-time high when we went to 27,000, and we reached another all-time high at 28,000. And people's making money on it. They really are. But it really is a fool's market. Because they're not giving us the money. So the central bank started doing something. Not only lowering interest rates, but they come over here and started buying like mortgage-backed securities and bonds. They started doing things like this. Well, and I can show you, I can pull this stuff up on the internet. I can show you one internet site where the central bank announced they were getting ready to buy $45 billion in securities, bonds. They announced it. So what happens? The bank goes down here and buys it, sells it to the central bank at a 2% profit. 2% is better than nothing because they're afraid you can't even pay them back. They're getting the money at 0.25%. They're selling them back to them at probably 2.25%. So the Federal Reserve is putting all this on their books, and their books look like they're in really good shape because they're not showing all of this money per se that's going out. Why? Because you realize any money they send out, it's fake money. It's fiat money. Fiat means that it's not backed by anything. And now they're not out here printing money. They don't have to print money anymore. That's why I tell you, you can't go to the bank and get your money. You can't do it. They don't have it. If you walked in the bank and tried to get $100,000 up here at Union Bank Park Range, I would just almost bet you they would not have $100,000. They don't have it. Banks, when they close at night, and I'm not saying Union Bank is, but a lot of these banks, when they close at night, they're borrowing from each other for about 8 hours, and they pay it off the next morning. But the problem is, it's growing. They're needing more and more and more and more. So much so now, even, I believe it's Bank of America or Chase Bank, and I don't remember which one, the president there has stopped loaning to other banks. He's come down here and started doing things like this, plus buying silver and trying to protect his bank because everybody realizes this is about to bust. So they go down here, and then the banks come down here and they buy back here. This money's never getting to us. So it's going here, so that's not helping the economy any at all. None whatsoever. So here's what's going on with the stock market. You've got the central bank buying up all these securities and these bonds. And so now the price starts going up. It starts going up. And I believe that the Federal Reserve was pumping in a total of $85 billion a month. $85 billion a month. I don't have the latest numbers, but I just quickly pulled up last night some numbers up to 2010. I'm going to tell you, They even tried to disguise some of this now because people are catching on. But I looked up 2014, how much money the Federal Reserve had pumped into the economy from 2008, 2009 to 2014, and we were pushing $4 trillion of fake gifts. No, they're not giving them dollars. It would be like, what it would be is, okay, I'm the bank and you're Ann, and I just get on my computer, ones and zeros, and in 5 minutes I've given you $1 billion. There's nothing backing it. No, nothing. There is nothing backing it. All there are securities, notes. I mean, you've got your treasury notes, but nothing is backing it. When they took the gold standard off, that means the money's worth nothing. And listen, they couldn't print money this fast. If you use that scenario that I just mentioned, that if I gave Ann $1 billion, $1 billion, not trillion, $1 billion. Do you know how long it would take Ann to earn that working minimum wage? Over 66,000 years. And I just gave it to her in 2 minutes. I'm telling you, most people haven't a clue what's keeping us afloat right now. And the thing that's keeping us afloat, again, I'll mention it again. In September, I believe it's September, it's August or September, on a Tuesday, the federal government the reserve pumped into the banks $39 billion. No, I'm wrong, sorry. $75 billion. On Thursday, that same week, they pumped in another $130 billion. I'm not making these numbers up. Just a little bit of research and looking around. $205 billion in 1 week. In 2008, we collapsed at $85 billion needing to pump in. We've got worse, yes. No. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing behind it. Now again, I do not have any degrees in this, and I've not read anything that even talks about even addressing our national debt. This is just the money that's going back into the Federal Reserve, that's going into these banks, which then is coming back. Then they're buying these treasuries back from these banks at a profit. Now, can you imagine when they call these notes in? These banks don't have the money. It's not there. They're borrowing from each other every night. This economy, there's no way this economy is going to stay afloat. I don't even know if I'd even call it by the grace of God. I don't know if we shouldn't have already collapsed it 10, 11 years ago. Because it's our problem, our mistakes. Listen, if I wanted to pull up the debt clock for you, have you ever pulled it up? You can't keep up with the million number. I can't count the millions fast enough. I can't count that fast. So you can imagine 200, because 200, listen, our national debt's around $22 trillion. Remember, the Federal Reserve the federal government does not own the Federal Reserve. It's a private industry. It was started in 1913. That was the worst thing America could have ever done, was develop the Federal Reserve. So the only control Congress has with the Federal Reserve, I guess, is to be able to get money from them, because they have, that's not part of the federal government. But you look, we borrowed, we took one day almost $250 billion in 1 week. $205 billion in 1 week. And I heard the other day that, and I didn't research it, I just heard some people talking, that there was like 2 or 3 or 4 days in a row where every day $125 billion had been pumped into the system. Yes. It'll be a reset. Everything's going to go back to zero. We can't pay our debt. Can't be done. China probably owes more than we do. It can't happen. But also, when you see this, I don't want to get hung there. I just want to make a good cause, because I don't have the know-all to explain every detail of this. I do understand the gist of it. But when you see this happening, and even though it's not working, and I explained to you why the stock market, because if the Federal Reserve stopped, that stock market's dead. And you realize before they allow the stock market to lose like over, I think it's either 8 or 9%, they will shut it down that day. And if people start making runs on the banks, they will shut the banks down. It's been done before. It's a group, like a board of directors type. Yeah, it's privately owned. Yeah, crooks. but it doesn't matter. Nobody is breaking our arm to do this. Nobody's breaking our arm to borrow money. But I'm going to tell you, we cannot pay our debt. It can't happen. Everything is going to go. China probably owes more, and a report I read, China, their central bank is pumping more into their economy than our bank is pumping into ours. China has all these ghost cities. Do a little research. All these beautiful that can hold tens of millions of people, and that are empty. In China, totally empty. Not one person living in these cities. That's been going on for a while. I'm telling you. But we are going, and it's going to have to come to a reset. Now, all major wars have all been started. They were preceded by trade wars. That's what we're in right now with China, and a little bit with Europe. And so that's why so many are fearful we're getting ready to go into war. China's very concerned about all of this also, because you say, well, Pastor, inflation's not up. Really? Really? I mean, who's telling you that inflation's not up? 25 years ago, I looked it up. 25 years ago, you could buy a car that cost $25,000. That today, 25 years later, will cost you $65,000. That is inflation. Your dollar is not buying anything. Well, I'm talking apples to apples. You buy a car, and by that same car today, you're talking it went from 20 to 25 to 65. It's inflation. Buy a gallon of milk. $3 to make a penny. So they're not telling us all of this thing here, and this is from my perspective. Michael, you can cut this off anytime.